The Girl by the Gate. It was a quiet evening on the outer edge of Earth's newest farming colony. The wind blew softly across the dry red fields, and the sky was starting to turn dark. John, a strong man in his early 40s, stood by his small, wooden house wiping sweat from his face. His day had been long, fixing broken machines, feeding the animals, cutting wood. He had done it all. Alone. Then, he saw something strange. A figure stood near his metal gate. It wasn't human. John stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching on the dusty path. The figure didn't move. As he came closer, he saw her clearly, for the first time. She was young, maybe in her 20s, though it was hard to guess her alien age. Her skin was soft and glowing blue. Her eyes were big and silver like the stars. She wore torn clothes, dirty and full of holes. Her long, dark hair was tangled, and her thin body shook like a leaf in the wind. She looked weak, tired, hungry, and scared. She knelt down as soon as John reached the gate, her head bowed low to the dirt. Her voice was soft, like wind through. "Broken glass, please, I can work, I can clean, I can cook, just please let me stay, I'll be your servant." John froze. A servant? He looked around. There were no ships, no other people, just her, alone, desperate. He opened the gate slowly. "Stand up," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. "Are you hurt?" She didn't move. Instead, she pressed her forehead against the ground. "I'll do anything," she whispered. "Just don't send me back." "Back where?" he asked. She didn't answer. John sighed. He had no idea what this girl had been through, but he saw pain in her trembling hands. He saw fear in how she flinched when he stepped closer. He saw something broken. "Come in," he said finally. "You can clean up in the barn. There's water there." She raised her head slowly, as if she didn't believe what she'd heard. Her silver eyes were full of tears. "You're letting me stay?" she asked. "For now," John said. "But no one's a servant here, understand?" She nodded quickly. The sun disappeared behind the hills as John guided her to the barn. It wasn't fancy, just old wood, hay, and a water tank, but it was warm and safe. He gave her a blanket and pointed to the pump. "Wash up. I'll bring food," he said, then turned to leave. As he walked back to the house, he looked over his shoulder. She hadn't moved. She stood in silence, hugging the blanket to her chest. An hour later, John returned with a bowl of stew and a piece of bread. The girl had washed the dirt off her skin. Now he could see more clearly how thin she was, how bruises marked her arms and neck. Her clothes were drying beside her. She wore only the blanket now, wrapped tight. She didn't reach for the food. "Go ahead," John said. "Eat." She looked at him unsure. Then, slowly, she picked up the spoon. The first bite made her eyes close. The second made her cry. Tears fell into the bowl, and she tried to hide them. John sat down nearby. "You got a name?" he asked. She shook her head. "I don't remember." "You don't remember your own name?" She looked away. "They erased it?" John frowned. "Who?" The girl didn't answer. He didn't push. Not tonight. Later that night, John lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind spun with questions. Who was she? Why was she out here, alone? What was she running from? And why did she call herself a servant? Just before sleep took him, he heard something outside. He sat up, walked to the window, and peeked through. The girl was sitting just outside the barn, staring at the stars. Her face was calm, but behind her, far in the night sky, a glowing blue light flickered, then another, like silent ships moving above the clouds. John narrowed his eyes. He had a feeling. This girl wasn't just lost. She was hiding. And something, or someone, was looking for her. The next morning, John woke early. The sky was still pale gray, and the farm was silent. He got dressed, grabbed his jacket, and walked to the barn with a fresh bowl of food and some old but clean clothes. The night had left him with questions he couldn't shake. Who was this alien girl? What had she escaped from? As he pushed the barn door open, he stopped. She wasn't sleeping. She was standing near the mirror in the corner, back turned, unwrapping the blanket from her shoulders. Her body looked fragile, too thin. But what made John's breath catch were the marks. Faded symbols, burnt into her blue skin like brands. Some looked like numbers. Others were in a strange alien language. And across her back ran deep, long scars. Ugly reminders of something violent. He stepped back without a sound. But she noticed. She quickly pulled the blanket around her and turned, startled. Her eyes wide with fear. I'm sorry, John said, holding up the bowl. Didn't mean to walk in. She lowered her gaze, then slowly reached for the food with trembling hands. John sat down a few feet away. You don't have to tell me anything, he said carefully. But those marks, someone did that to you. She stayed silent, staring into the bowl. I was owned, she whispered after a long pause. Used, trained, beaten. John's fists clenched. By who? They call them the collectors, she said. Rich beings from across the stars. They buy girls like me. For work, for pleasure, or for experiments. I ran from one of their ships. I jumped when it landed on a planet. I didn't even know where I was going. John's voice was low. They're looking for you, aren't they? She nodded slowly. They have hunters. If they find me, I'll disappear again. John leaned back, eyes fixed on the ground. He didn't like trouble. He didn't like danger. But he hated injustice. And this girl, who still didn't even have a name, was a victim. You're safe here, he said. For now. She looked at him, confused. Why are you being kind? John shrugged. Because someone should be. Later that day, the girl helped around the farm. She moved quietly with quick and skilled hands. She fixed broken wires, fed the goats, cleaned the barn better than he'd ever seen. She wasn't just strong, she was trained. Too trained. She never stopped to rest. She didn't ask for water. She flinched every time he raised his hand, even to scratch his head. John watched from a distance. That night, after dinner, she returned to the barn while he went to store supplies. But as he walked past her tattered old clothes, something shiny caught his eye. A small black object, metal thin like a coin, was sewn inside the collar. He picked it up and turned it over. His heart stopped. It was a tracker. A blinking, silent tracker. He looked up at the stars. Whoever owned her still might know where she was. John rushed to the barn. The girl was sitting on the floor, humming softly to herself. He tossed the tracker on the ground in front of her. Do you know what this is? Her face turned pale. I didn't know it was still there, she whispered. I swear. I thought I removed it. John's voice was low but firm. That thing could have brought them here. I'm sorry, she cried. Please don't throw me out. I'm not throwing you out, he said. But you need to understand. If they find you, they might come for me too. This isn't just about you anymore. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll run again, she said. Tonight. I'll go far. I won't bring danger to your door. But John didn't move. He looked at her, really looked at her. Thin, exhausted, alone. He remembered the scars. No, he said finally. You're not running. She blinked. Then what? I'll bury the tracker miles from here. I'll dig a hole and leave it with old metal scraps. Let them chase ghosts. Her voice broke. Why would you do that for me? John answered, with a quiet voice. Because nobody deserves to live like that. And maybe I'm tired of being alone too. She lowered her head, overcome with emotion. And for the first time since she arrived, she smiled. Just a little. That night, under the stars, John dug a deep hole far from his land. He dropped the tracker in, covered it with trash, and walked back under the moonlight. The girl was waiting near the gate, watching the sky. When he reached her, she whispered something he didn't expect. "My name was once Riva." He nodded. "Riva," he said. "It suits you." From the distance, a faint flash blinked in the sky. A ship? A satellite? They didn't know yet. But John knew. This much. Riva's past was hunting her, and it was getting closer. The days passed slowly on John's quiet farm, but things were no longer the same. Riva no longer trembled at every noise. She spoke more now. Short words, soft laughter, quiet thank yous. She still worked too hard and still avoided sleep, but John noticed the change. Her eyes weren't just full of fear anymore. They held something new. Hope. But one morning, everything changed again. John found Riva outside the barn, staring at the sky. She held something in her hand, small, broken, and black. It was another tracker. His chest tightened. "I found this under my skin," she said quietly. "In my leg." John's heart dropped. "You mean they put it inside you?" She nodded, her voice calm but sad. "Some owners did that in case the others failed." He sat down next to her. "How did you get it out?" She showed him a sharp metal piece, rusty, bloody. John's face twisted with anger. "You cut it out yourself?" "I had to," she said. "I didn't want to bring them here. You gave me a chance. I can't lose that." John looked at the device in her palm. It was still blinking, faint but active. He took it and crushed it under his boot. But the damage might already be done. That night, John locked the barn door. He kept his rifle beside his bed. Riva was quiet during dinner, barely touching her food. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then paused. "There's something I never told you." John looked up. She stared into the fire, not meeting his eyes. "When I escaped the ship, I made a deal with a smuggler. He agreed to help me leave the system, but I didn't have money. So I offered something else." John said nothing. "I promised him if he helped me, I would serve whoever he gave me to." She turned to him now, silver eyes shining in the firelight. "That's how I got here. He picked your land. I thought you were part of it." John's jaw clenched. "I never made a deal with any smuggler." "I know that now," she said. "But when I first saw you, I thought you were my new master." John shook his head, shocked. "So someone sold you to me?" She nodded. "But you didn't act like the others. You fed me, you protected me, you buried the trackers." John stood and paced the room. "And now this smuggler, does he think I still owe him something?" "Yes," Riva said softly. "And if he comes looking, he'll expect payment. Or he'll take me back." John cursed under his breath. "What else did you promise?" She looked down. "Obedience. Service. My life." He stared at her, torn between fury and sorrow. "You were desperate. You had no choice." "I still don't," she whispered. "Unless you help me again." The next morning, the wind brought the smell of burnt metal. John stood at the edge of his field and saw black smoke rising in the distance, on the hills beyond the trees. "A ship landed," Riva said behind him. "How can you tell?" She pointed at the sky. "That cloud, it's from a collector engine, the kind smugglers use." John's voice was hard. "They're coming." Riva touched his arm gently. "I can leave. Now. If I run, maybe they won't hurt you." "You really think I'll let them take you?" he asked. She lowered her head. "Then we fight?" John turned toward the house. "No, we prepare." By sunset, the traps were ready. John set up energy nets across the back field, rerouted the power to blast doors, and loaded every weapon he had. Riva helped in silence. She was fast, smart, and unafraid. As they worked, John noticed something strange. She began to hum. Not a song of fear, but one of strength. "What is that?" he asked. "Old war chant," she said. "From my mother's home world." She taught it to me before they took her. John handed her a stun baton. Sing it louder tomorrow. Let them hear it. That night, as stars filled the sky, they sat near the fire again. Riva looked at him and asked quietly, "If I survive this, what happens next?" John thought for a moment. "I don't need a servant," he said, "but I could use a friend." She blinked, surprised. "And maybe," he added with a small smile, "a partner for the harvest season." She smiled too. "I'd like that," she said, but deep inside both of them knew the smuggler was near, and the price of freedom would not be cheap. The next morning was too quiet. The birds didn't sing. The wind didn't blow. Even the old barn door, which always creaked in the breeze, stayed still. John stepped onto his porch with a heavy heart and his rifle in hand. Riva stood beside him, holding a sharp metal staff made from old farm tools. Both of them stared at the distant smoke now much closer. "They'll be here today," Riva said softly. "I can feel them." John nodded. "Then we don't wait." By noon, the first ship arrived. It wasn't big, sleek, black, and quiet as death. It hovered above the trees, then slowly landed in the center of John's cornfield, crushing rows of young crops under its weight. John narrowed his eyes. "That's not a collector ship. That's a private hunter class." Riva's face paled. "Worse, smugglers who work for anyone with credits." The hatch opened with a hiss. Out stepped three figures in long black coats and masks that covered their faces. Tall, armed, and moving like shadows, they began walking straight toward the house. John met them halfway. The lead hunter raised a hand. "Easy, old man," came a robotic voice through the mask. "We don't want trouble, we just want the girl." "She's not here," John lied. The second hunter laughed, low and cruel. "Your little farm's lit up with trackers. We know. She's here. She's free now," John said firmly. "And no one's taking her." The first hunter stepped closer. "She was bought. Paid for. She's property." John gripped his rifle tighter. "Not anymore." The third hunter, silent, until now, raised his weapon. "Then you're protecting a thief, that makes you one too." The first shot came fast. John ducked and fired. His old rifle shook, but the bullet hit one hunter in the shoulder, spinning him back. Riva from the barn threw her makeshift spear like lightning. It struck the second hunter's leg, and he collapsed with a scream. The third aimed at John, but before he could pull the trigger, Riva sprinted out of hiding and slammed into him, knocking him flat. They fought hard. Riva moved like a blur, trained by pain and survival. She used every scrap of metal, every tool around her. John backed her with cover fire, but they were only two, and more hunters arrived. A second ship landed behind the first, this one bigger. Heavily armed, Riva's eyes widened. "They brought a cage ship," John cursed. "They came ready to drag you off." "No," Riva growled. "They came to own me again." The new group of hunters moved differently, faster, cleaner, military-trained. They surrounded the house. John and Riva were pushed back inside, taking cover behind thick walls. "They'll burn the place down," John said, breathing hard. Riva looked around. "There's a trap door under your kitchen, right?" He nodded. "Leads to the old root cellar." "Then we go," she said. But John didn't move. "I won't hide while they destroy everything I built." Riva grabbed his arm. "And I won't go if you stay behind." He looked into her eyes. She was scared, but stronger than he'd ever seen her. This girl, this broken alien who once knelt at his gate, was now fighting like a warrior. He nodded. "Okay, we finish this together." They lured two hunters into the house using heat signals and noise. When they entered, John triggered the blast door from a hidden panel, trapping them inside. Then, using the back tunnel, they escaped toward the field, crawling through the old irrigation lines. Riva led the way, her body shaking with cuts and bruises. John followed, blood on his arm but still breathing. They reached the far fence just as a shadow passed overhead. Another ship. But this one was different, smaller, unarmed, and flying a symbol Riva recognized. "It's the woman smuggler," she said in shock. "What woman?" John asked. "The one who gave me the deal. She's here." The ship hovered and opened its doors. Inside stood a tall alien woman with sharp green eyes and gold skin. She wore armor and a cold smile. "Riva," she called. "You broke your word. You promised service. You ran." John stepped in front of Riva. "She owes you nothing." The smuggler raised an eyebrow. "Then you pay her debt, human. Give me the girl or give me something worth more." John didn't blink. "You want payment?" "Yes." He pointed his rifle directly at the ship. "Here it is." Boom. He shot. The control panel and the ship's engine sparked. The smuggler screamed and jumped back as her systems failed. Smoke poured out. Riva leapt forward, grabbed John's hand, and they ran into the forest, together. By nightfall, the sky was quiet. Again, the ships were gone. The hunters beaten or retreating. The farm was damaged but still standing. John and Riva sat on the porch side by side, dirty, bruised but alive. "You didn't have to stay," she whispered. "I didn't," John said. "I chose to." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time they sat in peace. But in the stars above, more eyes watched, and war wasn't over yet. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of the ships. John and Riva stood in silence at the edge of the broken field. The crops were ruined. Burned metal and broken weapons littered the ground. The scent of scorched earth filled the air. But it wasn't over. Riva's silver eyes locked on the horizon. "They'll come back," she whispered. "Smugglers don't like losing." John checked the power cells of his rifle. Only one shot left. "Let them," he muttered. But inside he knew they couldn't win another fight like that. Later that evening, while John fixed the broken fence, Riva searched the barn for anything that could help. She found old mining tools, hidden batteries, and a dusty crate sealed with alien symbols. She stared at it, confused. Her hands trembled. When John walked in, he saw her crouched beside the crate. "What's that?" he asked. Her voice was low. "This crate, it's not yours." He shook his head. "I've never seen it before." Riva opened the lid slowly. Inside lay something wrapped in cloth. A weapon. Not human. Not smuggler. Something rare. A plasma bow. John whistled. "That's not farming equipment." Riva picked it up. "This is from my people. Ancient. Before the collectors came. Only warriors could hold it." John looked at her. "Can you use it?" She nodded, her voice firm. "I was trained before they broke me." He stepped closer. "Then it's time to remember who you were." That night they didn't hide. They prepared. They set traps across the fields, used mirrors to reflect power beams, buried shock mines, loaded the roof with pressure canisters. Every corner of the farm became a battlefield. And Riva, she changed. She tied her hair back, wore armor pieces from the fallen hunters, painted her face with mud and blue ash. She looked like someone reborn. John couldn't. "Look away. You were never a servant," he said quietly. She smiled. "Not anymore." Just before dawn, the final ship arrived. Big, black, heavy, a warship. It hovered above the trees and landed with a quake that shook the earth. Its engines screamed. Lights flashed red across its surface. This time, they brought a general. The ramp lowered. Out stepped a tall alien male with gold armor, 4 arms, and burning red eyes. His voice boomed across the land. "Return my property," he roared, "or I will burn this ground and everyone on it." John stepped onto the porch with Riva beside him. "She's not property," he shouted. "She's free." The general's lips curled. "Then you die first." He raised one arm, and the battle began. Fire rained from the sky. Drones flew in all directions. John ran across the field, shooting down 2 with his last energy round. Riva launched arrows of glowing plasma from the rooftop. Each shot burned, through steel like paper. Hunters charged in. But the traps worked. Electric nets snapped around their feet. Explosive barrels blew holes in the dirt. Riva jumped down and fought with fists, feet, and fire. They pushed forward, but the general kept coming. Bullets hit his armor but did nothing. He was faster than the others, stronger. John fired again. Click. Empty. The general threw him to the ground. Riva screamed. She ran toward John, but the general struck her across the chest, knocking her into the dirt. Her plasma bow fell beside her, broken. She coughed, blood on her lips. The general grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off the ground. "You were made to serve," he snarled. "You forgot your place." Riva struggled, kicked, clawed, but he was too strong. John rose, slowly, grabbing a piece of metal from the ground. "Hey!" he shouted. The general turned and John threw the shard like a spear. It hit the general in the eye. He roared in pain, dropping Riva. She gasped, rolled, and snatched a knife from her boot. Then, with a scream of rage and freedom, she drove it into the soft part of his neck. He staggered, then fell. The battlefield went silent. The hunters froze. Without their leader, they had no orders. One by one, they dropped their weapons and ran. The sky grew quiet again. John knelt beside Riva. Her breathing was rough, but she smiled through the blood. You saved me." John wiped her face gently. "You saved yourself." She closed her eyes. "But you fought with me," she whispered. "No one ever did that before." He nodded. "You're not alone anymore." As the sun rose, the smoke began to clear. Riva sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, watching the golden light rise over the broken fields. John sat beside her, a warm drink in hand. "What now?" she asked. John looked at the land around him. "We rebuild." Riva's voice trembled. "You still want me here?" John smiled. "Not as a servant, as something else." She looked up, eyes shining. "Like what?" "Like family." She didn't answer, just leaned against his shoulder and closed her eyes in peace. The morning after the battle was quiet, too quiet. The smoke had cleared. The wreckage of the warship still smoldered in the field. Drones lay scattered like broken insects. But even with the enemy gone, John felt something heavy in the air, like the fight wasn't truly over. Inside the house, Riva lay resting. Her wounds were healing, but slowly. Her skin shimmered faintly now, blue light glowing beneath the surface. John had never seen anything like it. He sat beside her, holding her hand. "You're not just strong," he said softly. "There's something different inside you." She opened her eyes and gave a tired smile. "There is." That evening, she finally spoke the truth. "I wasn't born the way others are," she said. "I was grown." John's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, grown?" Riva sat up slowly and pulled her sleeve down. Glowing patterns lit up her arm, like circuits under skin. "I was created in a lab," she explained. "Built for one purpose, to serve. My body was shaped for beauty, my mind programmed for obedience. But they made a mistake." "What mistake?" "They gave me a heart, a real one, and a mind strong enough to feel pain, fear, and one day, hope." John listened, silent and still. "I wasn't supposed to escape," Riva continued. "I wasn't supposed to want freedom, but something inside me broke through their control. That something was me." She stood barefoot on the cold floor, looking out the window at the burnt land. "My creators called me Model RVX9. I didn't even have a name at first. But when I ran, I gave myself one." "Riva," John whispered. She nodded. "It means soul in my mother's language. At least, I think it was my mother. She was a voice in the dark, a whisper I used to hear when I was still trapped." John stepped behind her. "They wanted a servant," he said, "but they accidentally made a warrior. And now," she said softly, "I'm something else." That night, Riva walked into the barn and opened the old crate again, the one with the plasma bow. But now she reached deeper. She pulled out a cube, small and smooth, with lights that pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. John followed. "What is that?" "Memory key," Riva said. "They thought they erased my past, but this holds pieces of it. If I connect it to a power source, I might learn the truth." "Are you sure you want to know?" John asked. She looked at him. "Yes. If I'm going to be free, I have to know who I am." They connected the cube to a solar core. It blinked, then glowed, then hummed softly. A hologram appeared, a woman's face, older, with the same silver eyes as Riva's. Her voice was gentle. "To the one I call daughter. If you're seeing this, then you've escaped. I tried to stop them from taking you. I failed, but I planted this memory so one day you would know." The image flickered. "You are not a product. You are not a slave. You are my child. Your name is Riva Solari. And you were born, not built." The hologram ended. Riva dropped to her knees. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm real." John knelt beside her and placed a hand on her back. "You always were." The next day they walked together to the edge of the farm. Riva's body was still bruised, but her spirit was stronger than ever. She held the plasma bow in one hand and the memory cube in the other. John pointed to the hills. "There's a colony beyond the ridge," he said. "If we go there, we can find others. People who can help. Maybe even protect you." Riva looked up at the sky. "No," she said. John blinked. "No? They made me run my whole life. But not anymore. This is my home now, this land, this sky, this peace. We made it with fire and blood. I won't run from it." John smiled. "Then I stay too." She looked at him. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "If I leave, who will fix the water pump?" She laughed. A soft, full laugh that made her glow more than ever. That night, under the stars, Riva stood on the roof of the barn, her bow glowing faintly at her side. She watched the stars move, one by one. Somewhere up there, her creator still searched for her. Somewhere others like her might still be trapped. But here, on this broken farm, she had found something they never expected. A life, a name, a man who saw her not as a tool, but as a person. Riva Solari, once a forgotten slave, now stood tall and proud, and the stars would never own her again. Weeks passed. The wreckage was gone, cleared piece by piece. The broken drones were melted down. Burnt soil had been turned, seeded, and given life again. The farm was no longer a battlefield. It was a home. John worked during the day, rebuilding fences and repairing the water system. Riva worked beside him, planting new crops, adjusting solar panels, and feeding the animals. Her steps were lighter now, her eyes softer. She smiled more often, and meant it. But one thing had not been spoken between them. What were they now? One evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, Riva stood on the porch watching the wind play across the fields. Her hair moved gently, catching the golden light. She was barefoot, wearing one of John's old shirts, tied at the waist with a cloth belt. John walked up beside her, 2 mugs in hand. "Here," he said. "Mint tea. Not fancy, but it's hot." She smiled and took it. "Thank you." Again. He leaned against the railing. "You say that a lot." "I mean it every time." They stood in silence for a while, sipping quietly. Then she asked, "Why didn't you ever ask me to leave, even when you found out what I was?" John turned to her, serious. "Because you're not what they said you were. You never were. You were brave. You saved me just as much as I helped you." Riva looked down at her hands. "But I'm still not normal. I'm not fully human. I was made." John reached out and gently took her hand. "And yet," he said, "you laugh, you cry, you get angry when goats eat your plants. You care about this place. You care about me. That's more real than any birth certificate." Later that night, a soft rain fell. They sat inside by the fireplace. The room was warm, the light golden and gentle. Riva stood and walked to the window. "You once said you didn't need a servant," she said quietly. John looked up from the chair. "I don't." She turned to face him. Her voice was steady. "Then what do you want from me now?" John stood too, slow and careful. He walked over and looked into her eyes. "I want a partner, someone to build this life with, someone who doesn't owe me anything but stays because she wants to." Riva's voice trembled. "You want me to stay as an equal?" "I want you to stay," John said, "because you choose to." She stepped closer, looking into his eyes. "No one has ever said that to me before." "Then let me be the first," he said with a gentle smile. And for a long moment they stood like that, close, calm, connected by something unspoken and deep. Then she whispered, "I don't want to go. I want to stay. Not as a servant." She paused, but maybe as something more. The next morning the air was fresh and clean. Flowers had begun to bloom at the edge of the field. The goats wandered lazily, and the new crops were pushing through the soil. John stood by the gate inspecting a solar wire when Riva came out with a small basket of tools and food. She wore a simple scarf and a soft smile. "I packed lunch," she said. "For both of us?" "Yes. We're partners now, aren't we?" John chuckled. "We are." They walked side by side down the path toward the hills, where a new section of land waited to be cleared. The future ahead was unknown, but it was theirs. And for the first time in Riva's life, she wasn't being sent anywhere. She was walking with someone, not behind. That evening, after the work was done, they stood on the porch again, watching. "The stars," John pointed at one. "See that? That one's Earth. My home." She nodded. "And this is mine now." He looked at her. "You really believe that?" She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Yes," she said. "Because I wasn't chosen by a machine. I was chosen by you." Inside, above the fireplace, John had placed something new. A small plaque made from the metal of the broken hunter ship. On it he had carved just one word, Riva. Not a number, not a code, not a servant, a name, a person, a survivor, and now, his equal.